Apparently, Donald Trump has disappointed even his closest allies in the Middle East region. Saudi Arabia has announced the formation of the Maritime Defense Alliance. This is a military coalition of 14 countries to protect shipping in the Red Sea from attacks by Yemeni Houthis, who are supported by Iran. The Saudis are taking regional security into their own hands. It is notable that two countries in the region have not joined this military coalition. These are the United Arab Emirates and Oman. In addition, the United States of America has also not officially confirmed its participation yet. What is even more interesting is that Saudi Arabia is forming its military alliances without looking to Washington. At the same time, a very curious incident occurred in the Red Sea. A tanker carrying Russian oil turned around in the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait and went around Africa. Although it would seem Russia is a direct ally of Iran, and the Houthis should have let the Russians through without any problems, but they didn't. However, the Chinese are still being allowed through. By the way, let's analyze why that is. In this episode, we'll analyze what's behind the military coalition of Saudi Arabia, which consists of 14 countries, and how it is connected to the bigger picture, and the overall maritime blockade in the Middle East region. My name is Pechiy. Let's figure out all these twists and turns of the Middle East right now. But before we start, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to this channel. We are moving toward the mark of 300,000 subscribers, so I will be grateful for every subscription. So, let's start with the Saudi Arabian coalition itself. I'll say right away that this is quite a large topic, and the Saudis have approached it accordingly. According to Al Jazeera, representatives from 43 out of 51 invited countries participated in the meeting to form the military alliance, either in person or via video link. There was even a delegation from the European Union. In other words, Riyadh approached the issue of regional security on a large scale. 51 countries. The Ministry of Defense of Saudi Arabia stated that the goal of the alliance, and I quote, to strengthen maritime security, ensure freedom of navigation, protect international trade routes and energy supplies, as well as safeguard common maritime interests. In the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden. Saudi Arabia is the founder and leader of this coalition and will host its supplies on its territory. The point is that this military coalition will apparently have to fight a single enemy. These are the Yemeni Houthis, who constantly block the Bab-el-Mandeb and shell tankers in the Red Sea. The following countries are known to have joined the coalition: Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, Pakistan, Turkey, Egypt, Jordan, Yemen, Bangladesh, Nigeria, Sudan, Djibouti, Somalia, and the Comoros Islands. Don't let it scare you. Yemen signed on because if we dig a little deeper, we'll understand that the Houthis in Yemen control only part of the country. There's also an internationally recognized government which doesn't rule from the capital Sana'a, but from another city. So Yemen is actually divided into two parts. But what's even more telling is the part where things didn't work out. The United Arab Emirates and Oman did not join the alliance, even though they have similar security goals in the context of the conflict around Iran. You'd think, why not? The statement from the Saudi Ministry of Defense, however, leaves the door open. I quote, "The door remains open for other countries to sign on to the coalition charter after completing their national procedures. But Oman, as is well known since the early days of the war, has been torn between the United States of America and Iran and simply cannot choose a side. Let me remind you, at first they were with the Americans, then they tried to negotiate with the Iranians, then Iran eventually attacked Oman. As a result, now Oman and Iran are directly trying to negotiate with each other about what will happen with the Strait of Hormuz. But the United Arab Emirates are pursuing their own oil policy and, as you remember, even left OPEC and OPEC Plus, where, let me remind you, Saudi Arabia is represented. As for the United States of America, the key ally of Riyadh, Washington has not yet confirmed joining the alliance, although it is expected to do so. Why was there a need to create such a coalition in the first place? The reason is the maritime blockade of Saudi Arabia, imposed by Yemeni Houthis on July 20th, which disrupted oil supplies that had been redirected to the Red Sea after the closure of the Hormuz Strait. In addition, it is reported that the Yemeni Houthis also plan to introduce a fee for ships passing through the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, essentially repeating the same model of control that Iran uses in the alliance. Interestingly, on the same day that Saudi Arabia announced the formation of the coalition, a spokesperson for the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs called Reuters reports that Beijing allegedly intends to send up to 400 portable anti-aircraft missile systems to Iran, false and absolutely unfounded. Although until that moment China had remained silent on the matter for several days, even after Donald Trump commented on the topic saying, "If this happens, it would certainly be unexpected for me." Because I believed Xi Jinping, he promised me, he said that under no circumstances would he help Iran himself. But a military coalition is emerging, and in Beijing they apparently started to realize which way the wind is blowing, so they said, "No, this is all a lie." At the same time, a representative of the Prime Minister of Iraq stated to state media that there is no evidence of Iraqi territory being used for strikes against Saudi Arabia, although the Saudi Ministry of Defense itself stated that the drone strikes on critical infrastructure and on Riyadh last week were launched specifically from Iraqi territory. Overall, if you look at the situation, something important is coming in the Middle East region, something that could significantly change the situation. Why? The thing is, something strange happened recently in the Red Sea area. That is, Saudi Arabia is forming its own coalition. It's clear they'll all oppose the Houthis. By fighting, I mean counteracting their actions. And at the same time, a Suezmax-class tanker under the Panamanian flag, carrying Russian naphtha, was unable to pass through the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait and changed its route to go around Africa. The Sea Icon tanker, loaded at the Russian port of Ust-Luga on July 1st, set course for Asia with a cargo of at least 100,000 tons of naphtha. After the Houthis announced a naval blockade of Saudi Arabia, the movement of ships through the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait has decreased significantly, but the Houthis allow Chinese ships or ships carrying Chinese goods to pass easily. They even issued a special document saying that Chinese ships are allowed through without any problems. But for some reason, a ship with Russian cargo was turned back, even though Russia is supposed to be an ally of Iran. And Iran supports the Houthis, so something doesn't add up here. Overall, a number of ships are now changing their routes. According to Bloomberg, 6 Saudi oil tankers have refused to pass through the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait and have gone around Africa instead. The route is at least 2 weeks longer. At the same time, Saudi Arabia is redirecting some of the oil intended for Asia from the Red Sea port of Yanbu to the Egyptian port of Sidi Karir on the Mediterranean coast. They are creating a new pricing system for buyers picking up the oil. What does this mean for the main parties involved? For Saudi Arabia, forming a coalition of 14 countries is an attempt to institutionalize the protection of shipping without direct military confrontation with Iran. But at the same time, the absence of the United Arab Emirates and Oman from the alliance, as well as the still unconfirmed participation of the United States, shows that the consolidation of the regional coalition is not yet complete. But I would like to remind you that just a few months ago, there was no talk of consolidation in the region at all. For the Houthis and Iran backing them, the blockade itself is already having a measurable effect. It forces even ships, I emphasize, carrying Russian oil, that is cargo that has nothing to do with the conflict itself, and moreover, cargo from an ally, to go around an entire continent, which extends routes by weeks and increases transportation costs for all participants in maritime trade, not just for Tehran's direct opponents. For the global economy as a whole, this means an increase in oil and gas logistics costs at 2 key points at once, the Strait of Hormuz and the Bab-el-Mandeb Strait, simultaneously. This explains why oil prices in recent weeks have reacted so sharply to any news about the condition of these straits. What will happen next? Let's review the possible scenarios. The first scenario. This coalition, led by Saudi Arabia, will gradually expand as new countries join, probably including the United States of America, which will turn it into a real naval deterrence mechanism against the Houthis in the Red Sea. The idea is simply to form these forces and make it clear that if you take action, at least 14 countries will act against you. The second scenario, without the participation of the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and with Washington's position remaining uncertain, this alliance may remain more of a largely symbolic alliance than an actual military force capable of truly stopping the Houthis' attacks. The third scenario, an increasing number of ships forced to go around Africa, including ships carrying Russian cargo, will continue to raise the global cost of maritime oil transportation, regardless of the outcome of negotiations around Iran itself. So, what's the result? Saudi Arabia has formed a coalition of 14 countries to protect shipping in the Red Sea from the Houthis, but without the Emirates, Oman, and so far without confirmed participation from the US. At the same time, the maritime blockade is already in effect. Tankers are forced to go around the entire African continent, which adds 2 weeks or more to their journey. A situation is developing where both key maritime choke points for regional trade, that is, the Strait of Hormuz and Bab-el-Mandeb, are simultaneously under threat. This is truly a nightmare for the entire global oil and gas trade. On the other hand, this forces regional countries to start taking action. The first step is that Saudi Arabia has formed a coalition, and there is a possibility that sooner or later the entire region will have to solve this Iran problem once and for all. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care. Goodbye, everyone.